morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Just last week we talked about how China Film Company had made a financing deal with Legendary Pictures, and as a result in the near future when you see films like Warcraft and Seventh Son, the much delayed Jeff Bridges Julianne Moore fantasy flick, you'll be seeing the logo for China Film Company in front of the picture. But as I said, that's just a financing deal. China Film Company has requested that Legendary Pictures feature favorable depictions of Chinese characters and locations in their films, but largely China Film Company is just putting up the money for Legendary Pictures' upcoming slate. However, China Film Company seems to be very serious about getting involved with Hollywood and has just closed yet another deal, a second deal in almost the span of a week, and this time with Paramount Pictures. And I think this deal is much more exciting, it's much more expansive, they truly are partners with Paramount Pictures on this film, but the goals for this project are exciting both for Paramount and China Film Company, but also for the entire film industry, both here in the United States and in China, and also moviegoers. So the plan is that Paramount and China Film Company, are going in 50-50 to make a film that is supposed to target both American moviegoers and Chinese moviegoers. Now, of course, you're talking about the two biggest box office markets in the world right now. So the box office potential here is amazing. And I think it's very surprising to see Hollywood be so forward-thinking, or at least Paramount Pictures, to make a film that will try to appeal to both moviegoing audiences. We've been talking a lot here with the strength and the growing strength every day getting stronger of the Asian box office, and whether or not they will turn Hollywood's head. Will they start making movies aimed at that market? And instead it looks like we're going to have a situation where it's going to be aimed at both markets. We're talking, they're saying they want to hire an experienced US action director, but they want to have both American movie stars and Chinese movie stars. Now, this is something I would have loved to have seen with Godzilla. We've had some very spirited discussions about that. And Godzilla would have been a perfect opportunity to make the kind of film that's supposed to appeal to both markets. So what else would be as good an opportunity as Godzilla? It seems like they might have missed the boat, right? I think that is not true, because I think the subject matter that Paramount and China Film Company have decided to go in on together is perfect. It's a bullseye. It's hitting the nail on the head. What is it? Marco Polo. Now, of course, everybody initially thinks of the popular, children's game, pool party game, Marco Polo. Someone has their eyes closed and they say Marco and people yell Polo and they try and find somebody else. But the person behind that game is actually quite an important historical figure, which for some reason, though, hasn't really caught on in the popular consciousness. But he is a very important figure, and he just happens to span both the Western and Eastern world himself, which makes him such a great subject matter for this film. Now, I'll give you a brief introduction to Marco Polo. He was a Italian merchant. He came from a family of merchants, and when he was young, his father and his uncle decided to go on a road trip through Asia, basically traveling the Spice Road. I'm sure many of you have heard of that, and just to explore that. And they met many famous and important people in Asia at that time. And also, you're talking about a time in history when hardly any Europeans had been to Asia. Hardly anyone. Your typical European had no idea what was going on over there, had not been introduced to that culture at all. So Marco Polo, his father and his uncle go on a 24-year journey through China. That's how long they were there, and they returned with tremendous wealth, actual treasure, and then Marco Polo ended up writing a book about his experiences, calling The Travels of Marco Polo. Now, how he wrote that book is also a very fascinating story. There was a war going on when he came back home. He ended up being captured when he was fighting for his own country, and while he was in prison, he recounted his adventures through Asia to an inmate. But I think that, when you have a 24 journey alone in Asia, that's probably going to be the focus of the film. But a very interesting individual. And his book was very important because it was a very popular seller, and it introduced Europe to the Asian culture. And as I said, he met some really impressive, political figures in Asia, and, he really traveled the region and, was very curious. And he's said to have inspired Christopher Columbus. So you're talking about a fascinating figure. And as you can see, there's a great opportunity to have a multicultural cast. Now, also the other thing is they're saying they want to add a fantasy adventure element to it. Now, of course, that's very popular in Asian cinema. For instance, The Monkey King is a very popular film right now. Journey to the West, also basically covering the same, ancient Chinese fairy tale. These are two films. They've done very well at the Chinese box office covering this. And there's often a sense of fantasy and adventure to Chinese films. Not all of them, but it's, I think, more favored over there. Almost a little bit, I think, maybe a happy medium between Bollywood's all-out fantasy and Americans have a real lack of fantasy in our films, with the exception of fairy tale films, fairy tale movie adaptations. So it'll be interesting to see if, China Film Company and Paramount can make a film that appeals to both audiences, if that can be done, because you're talking about going beyond movie stars to the style of the film. But I think if done correctly, you could have a sweeping epic that could be one of the biggest box office hits of all time. We're talking about Titanic, and Avatar, Gone with the Wind, something very exciting. And I'm very excited to see Chinese movie stars working hand in hand, sharing the same screen with American movie stars. I think this is very exciting, as I said, for the industry, for the parties involved, for the talent. This is a great opportunity for talent to really be in something special and unique, and also to bring these movie-going audiences together. Why do you have to appeal to one or the other? It's the beginning. It's the first steps towards films that are made to appeal truly to the global audience. Not just, would you like to see what everybody's watching in America? I think it's just fascinating. I'm very, very excited about it. I mean, you're looking at maybe a potential future where you don't just have cameos from foreign movie stars, like take X-Men Days of Future Past, where Omar Sy and Fan Bingbing just have quick, small roles in the apocalyptic future. You're talking about movies where these actors would have full-bodied supporting or lead roles. We'll see what Omar Sy's role is like in Jurassic World, but I just think this is fascinating. So kudos to Paramount Pictures and China Film Company for being the two places to step out first and see it. And I hope they profit immensely, because as we all know, profit is what drives these decisions, not the need to bring the world together through film. That's just a happy side effect. All right, so that's the first story of the day. I'm very curious. Is this something that are you as excited about this as I am? Would you like to see a film about Marco Polo? Would you like to see the Chinese film industry and the American film industry working together like this? Or is it not important to you? All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, while film forges ahead to a new frontier, a very popular but controversial figure is taking a step back, and that's Tyler Perry. That's our second story of the day. As you might have heard, Tyler Perry has decided to take a break from film. There's some question as to how long that will be. He's saying for quite a while he wants to focus on his very successful TV efforts, mostly on the Oprah Winfrey Network, where he has very successful television shows, because also his films haven't been doing very well, and his Lionsgate deal has come to an end, and Lionsgate chose not to renew that deal. It's not so much because of the weak box office, because Tyler Perry's films are so inexpensive to make that they still largely turn a profit, but basically the deal with Lionsgate was so in his favor, because once again, Hollywood underestimated a new talent and gave him more than they should have. So it really just didn't make financial sense for Lionsgate to continue with the deal they had in place with Perry, because Perry was making the lion's share of the money off of his own films that they were distributing. Now people are saying, don't take it, it's not completely off the table, the idea that Lionsgate maybe in a year or two will come back to Perry and they'll make another deal, which is a little bit more favorable to both sides. But Perry decided, Lionsgate decided not to renew. My films haven't been doing so well. I'm going to focus more now on my television efforts. Now, Perry is at a place where he can do this. He, according to Forbes magazine, he made $130 million last year. Now, that's not just off of film, obviously. That's his personal salary. That's not what his company took in. That's Tyler Perry's take-home. $130 million. I'm sure a lot of that is from television. And so he has, he's financially at a place where he can do it if this is necessary. And also, he is going to be in David Fincher's Gone Girl. You might have seen him for a split second in the trailer, the first trailer. So he is trying to maybe build his persona as an actor outside of his own films, which has proven to be quite difficult for him. To the point, I think, because Tyler Perry is so well known as his own Medea character and as a figure, a public figure, that he almost takes you out of the film sometimes. I've been rooting for Tyler Perry. I've had the chance to interview him a few times. He's a very nice individual, and I think that he did a lot to, while to some degree this the African American aspect side of Hollywood has taken off thanks to him, and to some degree has surpassed him. It's grown beyond him. there's, for instance, a lot of other talent. We've been talking about Malcolm Lee from the Best Man films, Tim Story, of course, I believe Will Parker, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, very successful African-American producer in Hollywood, and their films do much better than Kevin Hart also have been doing much better than Tyler Perry's films. So he got everything started, but now it's almost like the genre, for lack of a better word, has left him behind. So insiders are saying that he will continue probably to make films, but not so quickly. He comes out with 1 or 2 a year at this point, and he might be making one every year or 2 years going forward. So the question is, do you think this is a good idea? I feel that he needs to do something to recharge, because I think he lost a lot of his inspiration for his movies. My last several reviews of his films have said they're good, they're enjoyable, there's something here that's important for audiences in terms of not just entertainment value but a message, but they seem like TV movies. Maybe because he has to turn them out so quickly. But I think that if he can maybe go find his spark again, his creative spark, at least for the silver screen, he might be better off. But then I think there's some danger that he could just turn into the male Oprah. Now this is a perfectly fine and legitimate choice where he would become continue being a very public figure who uses his tremendous wealth to create content and also to help out new talent. With Oprah Winfrey, that's something she does. She produces a lot of films. She really champions talent, and she occasionally is on the screen herself. She did a great job, I felt, in The Butler, and she was also a big major force behind the scenes on that film. So Oprah is very influential, and Tyler Perry, who is very close to Oprah, obviously, could really join forces with her and kind of, they could broaden the good that they do and the business the substantial business that they do as well. So I'm curious to what you guys want to see. Are you going to miss Tyler Perry making as many films as he does? I mean, there's clearly a market for it because look at how much money he's pulling in. Do you think TV is a smart place for him to focus his efforts right now? Do you want to see Perry come back? And if so, how do you want to see him come back to film? Or do you think that the male Oprah route is a great idea? Maybe Tyler Perry's time in front of the camera has come and gone, and now he can be very influential behind it. So I'm very curious to how everybody feels. I know he's a very controversial figure even here. Some people love his movies, and some people feel they're really destructive, and they perpetrate a really bad stereotype. But I don't necessarily think that's the case, but I'd be curious how other people feel. So that's the second story of the day. The third story is that you might have heard that Midnight Rider, that's the film that Sarah Jones, the camera assistant, was killed on an oncoming train. They were shooting on tracks they did not have a permit for, they didn't have permission, they had nobody there, a representative from the railroad, and as a result, they did not know the train schedules. The train came, several members of the crew were very injured, and Sarah Jones lost her life. But anyway, people are quite shocked to hear that Midnight Rider is trying to go back into production. They're going to be going into production in Hollywood, and there is a campaign for crew members to boycott the film, to refuse to work on it so that the film cannot go forward. Even IATSE, one of the unions in Hollywood, has said that they are very surprised that this production company is continuing because they know that it's under investigation still. So they are requesting that the Midnight Rider production office provide them with proof that the agencies that are investigating them has given them a go-ahead to continue with filming. Now, some people have said, it's a very unfortunate incident what happened to Sarah Jones, but other people's jobs are on the line here. Why should the whole production be punished? And I think that considering that it's the same director-producer who's at the helm, and William Hurt, who's the star of this film, came out and said, oh, well, I wanted to say something, but nobody would back me up, kind of like a real wishy-washy defense, which I felt, and he didn't even say it personally, it was like a leaked email to another person, and I think, as many people rightly pointed out in that situation, William Hurt was the most powerful person on that set. He was the star, the movie couldn't have been made without him, and he could have very easily said, I simply refuse to shoot this scene, and then that would have removed the danger from, William Hurt, that movie needed William Hurt more than William Hurt needed that movie. William Hurt, I don't know his career, not huge, but he's still working, and so he might not have maybe felt comfortable. This is a lead role, something he hasn't had in a long time, but still, I think that they're not going to be like, William Hurt wouldn't shoot one scene, forget it, get rid of him. I mean, they're like, they need him a lot. I mean, there's a lot of power plays going on in any film set. But William Hurt says, I did the best I could. I too, decided not to say anything. And basically, you have a situation where a lot of people knew there was a dangerous situation going on here and decided not to say something. Everyone just stood back and let something horrible happen. And I think there's culpability in that. I think that Midnight Rider should not be able to go forward. Personally, this is how I feel, totally as is. I feel that the very irresponsible director-producer who pushed this should not be working. And I would think that, as many of you said, the assistant director is in charge of this, the unit production manager, all the location manager, all of these people were also very responsible for what happened. Those jobs should all be replaced. So the movie maybe shouldn't not be made, but if it's moving forward with the same crew intact that was so irresponsible, and to see no repercussions, the lack of repercussions often in this society are very surprising. I just got finished on Friday talking about our legal system and how I thought it was pretty good, talking about hashing out the truth behind the Bryan Singer accusations, and some of you took issue with that, saying, okay, Grace, if you want to tell yourself we have a good legal system, that's fine. I think it gets it right more often than not, but I will say that for instance, I was just reading this morning, there was a horrible taxi accident here in New York City where a taxi driver was being very irresponsible, jumped the curb and hit a woman, and actually, the force was so tremendous that it took her leg off. And the driver is back on the street driving less than a year later and never has gone to jail. No criminal charges were filed against him by the city. And this woman, who was a tourist from the UK, lost her leg below the knee. As a result, has had to take to a civil lawsuit. Often civil lawsuits have to try and right the wrongs that were not addressed in criminal court. So she's suing the city and the driver for quite a bit of money, about $27 million. But, I think the circumstances warrant it, and often people ask for that kind of money because, just like we're talking with Hollywood, money talks, and money is often the greatest punishment, and it really makes people pay attention, unfortunately. So I feel that for there to be no repercussions for Sarah Jones losing her life, even to the film itself, for the business just to go on as usual, it's just appalling. And, I recommended when I first covered the Sarah Jones story, a great documentary. I'll put a link to it below again in the video description, about how there was an accident on Pleasantville where a crew member was driving home very tired, got in a car accident, lost his life. There was a lot of momentum to fix things then, but then momentum went away and nothing has been fixed. And I worry that the same thing is happening again. So I'm curious to how you guys feel if you were a working crew member or not. Maybe that's even more important. If you weren't working and you had the opportunity to get work on the Midnight Rider set, would you do it? Do you feel it's important to take a stand, or do you feel that the industry needs to keep moving on and some people need a job? So write your thoughts down below about that as well. It is, again, these are all very gray situations. All right, so that's the 3 stories of the day. The viewer question comes from Emily Uribe. Emily is a frequent commenter and viewer here. I love the new YouTube system where you guys can have your actual names and pictures, because I'm getting to know so many of you so much better. So Emily brought to my attention something that seems to be potentially quite big. So and some of you might not have heard of it as well, so let's discuss. There's several elements here I'd never heard of before, so I think it's a great story to cover today. So thank you, Emily, for bringing it to my attention. So Emily says, hi Grace, love your show. I love to come home and watch your channel. Thank you. Thanks, Emily. That's great to hear. Favorite channel for entertainment on YouTube. That's so nice. She says, okay, question. News on Twitter yesterday dropped that there was going to be an After movie. Now, After is the name of this fiction she's talking about, this story. We'll get to that in a moment. She says, I don't know if you've heard of this Wattpad book series, but it's very popular on the website app. It is a One Direction fan fiction story, and I love it. So Emily loves it. It's quite a number of people love it, as you're about to find out. And Emily goes on to say, the UTA, United Talent Agency, decided to take half rights to the whole movie, but I want to know your input. Do you think this will hit with the teen demographic, or will it be a blunder? The storyline of this book is young, innocent college girl falls in love with bad boy. It has a lot of mature content in the book, as is par for the course, I think, a lot of this fan fiction from what we're hearing, but maybe the movie will be different. So Emily wants to know my thoughts on this, and I think it's she put a smiley face at the end. I love the smiley faces. All right, so Emily wants to know my thoughts on this, and I think this is, as I said, as I looked into it off of her question, I saw something very interesting taking shape here. Now, first off, what is Wattpad? She said that is a website app, and so I looked it up, and Wattpad is an app where it's almost like YouTube for books, where an author can write a story chapter by chapter. They come out at timed releases, and then the writer, though, spends the rest of their time interacting with the reader. So I think that's very interesting, and apparently Anna Todd, who writes After, is very good at this. It's her full-time job almost to write this fan fiction, and then also to interact with the reader. And I guess the idea is that the readers can almost to some degree influence the story as it goes forward, because the book isn't complete when it comes out, it's just going chapter by chapter. And I think even if I think when you're interacting, I mean, you guys often interact and influence the course of this show through your interaction with me. And I think when you are really involved with your viewers, which is great, one of the best aspects of the internet, it does, even if Anna Todd might not say so, it does influence, I think, the outcome and the direction of where you're going. Now, that's what Wattpad is, and apparently it has 22 million monthly users, and 80% are on their phone. 80% of people are reading these things on their phones for apparently fan fiction, fiction, and non-fiction. So there's all kinds of stuff going on there. But this is one of their most popular properties. And UTA is repping basically the work. They are, after 50 Shades of Grey sold for so much money to Universal and Focus, quite a lot of attention, as you know. E.L. James, many people know who that is now, and she was just started out as someone who wrote Twilight fan fiction. And now it's becoming a very anticipated movie for Valentine's Day 2015. So UTA apparently sees that this is maybe a pop-up industry. This is a new trend. So they went and they found this fan fiction called After, and apparently 500 million people have clicked on it so far. So UTA is going to rep this property, try and see if they can get a studio to pick it up and make a movie out of it. And I think they're intending to go forward and to represent numerous Wattpad properties that are very popular. So what is this? Fan fiction has to be based on something, right? So what is this the fandom of? Well, it's the fandom of One Direction. Most importantly, Harry Styles. But it takes a lot of liberties here. And basically, this young girl falls in love with Harry Styles. He likes her, but it paints Harry Styles as a very dark individual, and apparently they have it describes it as a roller coaster relationship. Now, Harry Styles, I'm sure I don't know what Harry Styles is like personally, but I'm sure he's like, what? Some woman, Anna Todd, just gave me a personality without checking with me. So now, obviously, if they're going to make a movie, they can't use One Direction or Harry Styles. They can't reference that, even though it is apparently referenced in the fan fiction. But just like 50 Shades of Grey started out being, it's going to be thinly veiled. Thinly veiled. It'll be like some variation, I hope. Hopefully not that obvious, but something on Harry Styles or One Direction. But it's going to be a boy band, and I'm sure a singer who looks very much like Harry Styles. So I think that'll be interesting, and I'm sure Harry Styles is not happy to see that this fan fiction has taken on even new levels of fame, because most people had not heard of it outside, I think, of the One Direction fan group. So it'll be interesting to see if, this is the first time we've had fan fiction around an actual person. The Twilight fan fiction for 50 Shades of Grey it was around a fictional property. So that's something that's very, I think, very touchy, and we'll see how that works. But I'm wondering how you guys feel. I think, by the way, Emily, I think that it will probably try and keep as racy as it can, the aspects to it, because clearly that's what people are enjoying about it. I think nobody wants to see a PG-13 version of a teen girl and this boy band guy that she likes who's a bad boy, because that's not what they're reading online. So I think they're going to try and keep it as intact as possible, but just change the names because they don't want to get sued by Simon Cowell and One Direction and Harry Styles. But I'm curious to what you guys think. What do you think of the rise of fan fiction as something that movie studios are interested in producing? There was a lot of discussion about the quality of the writing. For those of you who are reading After, is it well written, or is it strengthened that it fulfills a fantasy about the One Direction romance? Do you believe Harry Styles is actually like that? If you were Harry Styles, how would you feel about this? And are any of you on Wattpad now? What are you reading on Wattpad? I think this is a very interesting development. I'm surprised, and also, as I said, well written. I think that fan fiction is very tricky. We'll see how 50 Shades of Grey does. We'll see how this does. But, obviously there's a market for it. And that's one of the great things about the internet. For so long, the suits at publishing houses, movie studios, all different areas have been able to be gatekeepers and keep out, a lot of talent, and have decided, not based on what they think people want to see, but often their own tastes, what should and should not be out there. And often they've just let, it's based on a business of connections. Who's your friend? Who's your relative, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the great things about the internet is that what people are interested in rises to the top. It's very, I guess, democratic. You have to have the numbers. And Anna Todd has the numbers. 500 million people is a very impressive number, and I think any studio would be foolish not to take a serious look at this. So, Emily, thank you so much for your question and calling this to my attention. I'm very interested in seeing how this develops. and I will see. Teen adaptations have been a tricky road. So far, only Hunger Games, Twilight, and Divergent have been able to do well. And also, it's interesting to note the One Direction movie didn't do quite well at the box office itself, at least here in the United States. But maybe it was missing a very sexy dark side to it. So we'll see. Thank you again for your question. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in today. Write down below what you think of today's 3 stories and the viewer question, and let me know what you'd like to see covered tomorrow and any questions you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.